Hello everyone, this is Mr. Brain Junkie here, and today we're going to be talking about a science fiction film called Knowing. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. In 1959, a girl named Lucinda stares into the distance while hearing voices whispering in her ears. Their teacher tells them to draw pictures of the future and they'll put them in a time capsule to be opened 50 years later. All the children draw colorful pictures, but Lucinda continues to write a series of numbers on the paper. Her teacher takes the paper away from her before she can finish the last digits. They bury the time capsule underground while the teacher notices that Lucinda has disappeared. They form a search team for the girl and eventually finds her in the basement scratching the numbers on the door with blood on her hands. She keeps on pleading for the whispers to stop while her teacher looks at her in confusion. 50 years later, John, an astrophysicist who lost his wife, finds it difficult to control his depression and maintain a healthy relationship with his son, Caleb. He has trouble believing that there's meaning in life after his wife has died for no apparent reasons. John goes to attend the celebration in Caleb's school where they'll dig up the time capsule that was buried 50 years ago. The teacher who taught Lucinda is still alive and she cuts the ribbons in honor of her class. They take out the time capsule and proceeds to hand out all the artworks from before. Caleb receives the letter from Lucinda and looks at the numbers in confusion. He begins hearing whispers from everywhere and sees a tall man with blonde hair standing from afar. They go back home and John notices the letter that his son brought. He didn't think too much about it, only telling his son that it's time for bed. Later that night, he hears some noise from the bedroom and goes to check, only to see his son playing the old footage of his wife singing a lullaby. He closes the door and feels extremely depressed, drowning himself in alcohol to forget the pain of losing his wife. He sees the letter again from Caleb on the table and decides to keep himself busy by writing the contents on the blackboard. He tries to single out the numbers for meaning and arrives at the date of 9/11/2001. John searches the internet for the tragedy, only to find that the number of mortality is the same as written on the letter. Thinking that it's only a fluke, he begins searching for all the dates written on the letter and finding even more tragic events in correlation. He goes to his friend Phil and tells him the strange findings. Every set of numbers on the letter matches a major disaster in date and mortality. There are 3 sets of numbers that hasn't happened yet, one of them showing 81 people will die somewhere tomorrow. Phil thinks that the numbers are just coincidences, as there are also digits on the paper that apparently has no meaning. He suspects that someone may be playing a joke on John, or worse yet, his friend is going crazy from the wife's death. John rushes out in anger as his friend refuses to believe him. He goes to Lucinda's teacher for a visit and wants to verify the authenticity of the letter. She confirms that this is the original and remembers that they found Lucinda scratching her nails out on the door. When John inquires about the whereabouts of Lucinda today, the teacher informs him that the woman died a few years ago. John tries to make a few phone calls at home about Lucinda as Caleb plays outside the house. The boy gets a visit from 2 mysterious men who gives him a small black stone. John sees this and rushes out. He asks Caleb about what happened and sees the rock that the man gave to his son. He thinks nothing of it and warns Caleb to never talk to strangers ever again. Later that day, he searches online about Lucinda, finding the report on her death. Suddenly, his sister scares him from the back, which was pretty amusing, but not for the main character. We learn that John has a difficult relationship with his parents due to them being extremely religious and John being an atheist. The sister wants John to visit their family, but John refuses because he hasn't talked to his father for a very long time. John stays up the whole night trying to look for an accident that involves 81 deaths, but finds no such event no matter how long he waited. He goes to pick up his son the next day and gets stuck in traffic in the rain. He looks at the GPS and notices that the coordinates are the same as written on the letter. He gets out and tries to find out what's causing the jam, and suddenly, a large passenger plane falls from the sky towards them and crashes right beside the highway. John rushes to help the survivors, but only sees that everyone is burning in flames. He goes back home while still having trouble believing what just happened. John goes online to search about the accident, only to find the report stating that 81 people have died. His friend arrives to comfort him and warns him to not go near the sites again, but John feels an obligation to prevent the accidents. At night, Caleb wakes up hearing the whispers and sees the same man in his room this time walking towards him. The man points towards the window and Caleb looks outside only to see that everything is burning in flames while the animals are running for their lives. He screams in fear and his father runs upstairs to comfort him. John sees the man in the backyard and rushes outside with a baseball bat, warning him to never come near the house again. The next day, he drives to Lucinda's house following the news article of her death and sees a woman with her daughter leaving. John follows them to the museum and introduces himself with his son. They sit down to have lunch and we learn that the woman's name is Diana while her daughter is Abby. She learns that John's a single parent just like herself and tries seducing him with her female hormones, but John is not interested in her, only asking for her mother instead. Diana becomes upset at the mentioning of Lucinda and her predictions and rushes outside while John pleads for her to wait. He wants her to help him figure out what this all means, but Diana drives away, leaving the two behind. John goes back home and finds the location of the next disaster using the GPS coordinates, and informs the police on the payphone to block off all the pedestrians in the area. He sends away Caleb to his sister so that she may look after him while he's gone. She seems to know something is wrong and gives him a hug before saying goodbye. John goes to the location and to his surprise, the area is not blocked off like he expected. He tells the police to evacuate everyone, but only serves to make himself look suspicious while the police chases after him. He runs into a subway station looking for anyone suspicious that may cause an attack. John sees a man in black hoodies who runs away the second John makes eye contact with him. The main character chases him onto the train and follows the suspicious man all the way to the end. The police officers show up as well and tells them to stop running at gunpoint. The man surrenders and it turns out that he's only a thief that stole some DVDs. Another train approaches from the distance, but the train track malfunctions which causes the train to move off course and flip over. John notices this and tells everyone to move back and get out of the train, but his warnings are too late as the other train proceeds to crash into them, causing tremendous damage. He gets out of the station only to see everyone wounded and panicking while everything is covered in dust. John goes home and to his surprise sees Diana waiting on the front doors. She tells the kids to go inside and proceeds to tell John that the last day on the ladder is the same day that she's supposed to die. Diana decides to bring John to where her mother used to hide from everyone around her. She expresses her discontent about her supposed destiny to die on the day which her mother always talked about, but John only sees regret and not being able to prevent any future disasters. He wishes that he possessed the ladder sooner as it may have allowed him to save his wife. They arrive at the abandoned house where Lucinda used to reside in. While walking inside, Diana takes a look at the letter again and notices that the numbers ends with the letters EE but has no idea of its meaning. They enter the building and finds a room with numerous pictures all relating to the previous disasters predicted by Lucinda. Interestingly, there's also a religious picture with a sun in the middle, to which Diana says that her mother would stare at for hours at a time. She takes the picture just in case it may show them clues for the future. John finds the same stones that was given to his son on the floor, which prompts him to look under the bed. He noticed some engravings on the backside and flips the bed over. Shockingly, it's full of carvings that repeatedly say everyone else, which represents the letters at the end of the message that Lucinda wrote 50 years ago. At the same time, the mysterious man approaches Abby and Caleb, telling them to come. Scared by their presence, Caleb presses the horn on the car, causing the parents to run outside. John makes sure that the children are not harmed and proceeds to chase after the man. He points a gun at one of them, and the man turns around slowly. He opens his mouth and a bright light shines towards John, blinding him temporarily as the stranger disappears. They go back home and realizes that the final event may very well destroy everyone on Earth. Diana refuses to believe that this is the truth, as she can't stand the idea of losing her daughter. They each go back to their children and spends what could be the last night with them. The next morning, John wakes up seeing Abby coloring the religious picture Diana took, and he realizes that the final disaster may have something to do with the sun. He quickly goes to the observatory and checks on the recent readings of the sun, which shows abnormal levels of solar radiation. He thinks that a large solar flare may occur very soon, and that may be the cause of humanity's destruction. Diana overhears John's conversation and falls into despair. He tries to comfort her and says that they can hide underground inside caves which might protect them from the sun's rays. Everyone packs the necessary supplies for their journey, while John decides to finally call his father and tells him that he loves his old man, despite their differences. He wants his parents to go hide in the closest underground structure so that they may have a chance of surviving this calamity. His father refuses as he already accepted his fate and is fine with dying beside his loved ones. John calls for Caleb to leave, but he finds the son writing the numbers just like Lucinda did, and when he took away the paper, Caleb begins scratching into the table. Seeing the numbers that Caleb made, John realizes something important and rushes everyone to the school. He goes to the basement where Lucinda was hiding 50 years ago and takes the door home in his truck. He tries removing the new paint off the door as he realizes that Lucinda carved the last coordinates here before she was taken away. Diana believes that John has lost his mind and proceeds to leave him behind while taking the children with her as well. John gets the coordinates from the door but sees that everyone has left, which prompts him to chase them from behind. Diana arrives in the gas station to resupply, and when she heads into the building, the mysterious man takes her car with the children inside and leaves. Diana notices a black rock similar to the ones found in her mother's home. She turns around only to see her car taken with the children kidnapped. She screams in agony and quickly takes a car from the station, chasing after them. In a state of panic, she charges across the intersection and gets hit by a large truck that flips her over. John soon arrives and finds an accident on the road, but sees no kids anywhere near the cars. He goes towards the ambulance and sees that the paramedics are trying to save Diana, but eventually fails. He walks towards her lifeless body and holds her hand while apologizing for everything that's happened. He notices something strange in her hand, and it turns out to be a similar rock that the strangers gave to Caleb from before. Believing that the strangers must have taken the children, John goes to the final destination, which turns out to be Lucinda's house in the woods. He finds Diana's car and walks forward where he sees the man responsible for taking his son. He threatens the stranger at gunpoint, but hears Caleb calling him to stop. He tells his father that the strangers have been protecting them this whole time and that they must go with them in order to be saved. It turns out that they were the ones who sent the messages about the major disasters, trying to save humanity from being completely destroyed. John looks up and sees a gigantic spaceship hovering above them, which causes him to kneel in disbelief. Caleb tells his father that they must go now and come back after everything is destroyed in order to start over. They walk towards the spaceship, but the man tells Caleb that his father cannot come because he wasn't chosen. John cries as he realizes that this would be the last time seeing his son, but he tells Caleb to go without him instead. He promises to always be with Caleb, even if his physical body is not present, because John will always be in his heart. Caleb walks towards the strangers while they transform into their true bodies, appearing as transparent humanoids glowing with light. They levitate towards the spaceship and eventually takes flight into the atmosphere alongside hundreds of similar spaceships, all leaving Earth at the same time. John cries at the loss of his son and falls to his knees. When he wakes up in the morning, he takes his car and drives towards the city. Human society has fallen apart and everyone panics while the streets are filled with riots and suffering. He walks towards his father's house and embraces the sister, telling her that Caleb is safe from everything now. The whole family joins in their embrace while waiting for the disaster to happen. The sun ray begins burning through the atmosphere, causing large explosions that engulf the city and eventually burns off the face of the earth. Caleb and Abby are dropped off in a distant planet along with other children from Earth. They run towards a large white tree as the spaceships take off into the sky. So what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my video, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time.